What's up, guys? How's it going? Gonna go ahead and do a little cleanup on the frame today, get it ready for powder coating. Got her outside. I'm going to hit the disgusting nasty frame with the pressure washer. As you can see, the frame is quite disgusting, and I think any powder coater would tell you to kick rocks or go fly a kite, or any other choice of expletives if he brought this into his shop. So I'm going to use a little bit of degreaser. Stole the wife's granite spray bottle. I swear it was almost empty, babe. Thank you. I also have just a cheap pack of brushes. They have so many different kinds. You'll be out of there for under 10 bucks most of the time. So anyways, I'm gonna hit this with the pressure washer and get scrubbing. All right, thanks for watching. Alright, so now's a really good time to check for cracks in the frame. Cracks around welds, cracks anywhere. You want to identify this stuff before you dump a bunch of money into powder coating and find it later, or even if the powder coater finds it while he's prepping. It's just more downtime having to come and pick it up, or maybe even source a new frame. I decided I'm going to go ahead and use the dirty frame, the frame that the bike is named after, Project Bank-owned. Just going to keep riding dirty. I might register the 99 frame in Idaho and use the sticker. Just got to keep it real, right? So anyways, let's keep scrubbing. All right, so there she is. There's the finished product. Got a little bit of grass clippings on her from the landscaper. I had left the frame outside for a few days after I cleaned it up to let any residual water dry that may have gone inside through these holes, wherever water may have gotten in, up in here, in these holes in the down tube. So pretty much all the grease is off. That will make the powder coater very happy. I'm actually considering the route of paint now. All right, so here is the before of the engine. The dirt, the grime, all that. I'm gonna go ahead and knock some of this off with a wire brush before I split the cases on this thing. Pretty nasty. All right, so we've done a little bit of degreasing on the engine here, enough to get it split apart without a bunch of crap falling inside anyhow. And we're going to have to start with a few special tools. The first one being the part I was missing when I wanted to show you guys earlier how to remove the stator. And basically the stator and magneto need to be removed before you can split the cases, as well as with everything on the clutch side, clutch basket, clutch assembly, basically some shifting pawls and a few other deals that we'll get to when we get to the other side. But really, I just want to check the condition of this thing. You're going to want to start by removing this nut. A lot of guys will use a clutch holder tool, which also has two pins on the back to help remove the stator here. They go in like so. Gives you something solid to work against, but I own an impact gun, so there's that. Next, you're going to need to thread in this crank puller, or I'm sorry, stator puller. It threads into the inside of the magneto or stator, and then this center bolt will push it off the end of the crankshaft. So keep in mind this is a left-hand thread. That is why I was having difficulty for a moment. I completely forgot about that. It is not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It is the opposite. that's that. Despite being full of water, it actually doesn't look too bad. Set that ugly bastard aside. Now we can remove the actual generator, stator, magneto, whatever you like to call it. This is the part of the bike that generates electricity. So that is held in by a few 8mm bolts here. So they're not doing very good either. These were definitely underwater. So this is also how you time your bike, much like a distributor in a car. There's a few hash marks down in here that you line up on the plate to the mounting points inside the left case. There's that. As mentioned, it was underwater. It's got some barnacles growing on it. Pull this little clutch arm out. Set that aside. And now we can sort of clean up some debris here and move on to the clutch side and start tearing that apart. There's usually a little washer on the back of this, as you can see in the center. There's two little finger holes in the case here where you can get your fingers all the way down in there. This clutch actually looks new, pretty new. That's good. We're not going to use it, but definitely nice to see upkeep. Typical Suzuki notching of the basket. You can see here where these fingers in the basket are notched from the clutch plates whacking against them. And so if you have a bike that lurches when you put it into gear, even though you have your clutch pulled in, that's typically why the plates can't slide like they're supposed to, in and out on these fingers here inside the basket, and so it creates sort of a binding. There's probably a more technical way to explain that, but in layman's terms, that's sort of what's happening. So Suzuki baskets are notoriously soft, and if you replace your old basket with a new OEM basket, it will wear out in pretty short order also, so best to just upgrade it. Right, now we got to go ahead and remove this inner clutch hub. Also, if you guys need one of these, same gig, Rocky Mountain dealer, I'll take care of you. You want to set the tangs on the end of this thing into the grooves of the inner hub, and you don't want to put too much pressure on it if you plan to reuse the hub, because it's very soft aluminum. 30mm nut. Not much torque on that. There's a nut. This is the washer that bends up over the side of the nut, sort of like a lock washer. take the inner hub out. There's always a spacer, so watch out for that. Very important. So bearing there. Inner race. So you want to keep this stuff in order. Do your best to anyway. Including the spacer, all this stuff. Just kind of keep it in order. It will take up less space, and not only that, see, washer, bearing, fell off the back. Will take up less space, and you'll be able to see how it all came out later. Just something helpful. Go ahead and remove the shifting mechanism from this guy. This is where it protrudes out on the other side of the engine. As you can see, the dirt. This is where your shift lever actually goes. Now we have to go ahead and remove these two screws. They hold some of the shifting mechanisms in. There are a couple of very small springs inside of here. See there's another washer as well, as I'm looking in here, that came off the end of the shifting mechanism. So you want to keep track of that kind of stuff. I'm going to put it back on there. That way I see it when I'm cleaning it up. Just keep your eyes open. Stuff like that. Transmissions full of washers. You name it. So basically all these gears need to come out before you can actually split these cases. And then after all this stuff comes out, you're going to go ahead and pop all the bolts out of the other side. And so these 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to want to use an impact screwdriver, excuse me. Not the impact gun, not a regular number 2 Phillips head. Those usually have Loctite on them. They're really hard to get out. If you don't use an impact screwdriver and you strip them, you're going to be so upset. So don't do it. By the way, make sure you have the impact screwdriver set to go the right direction. Works like a charm, no big deal. There's the small pieces I was talking about inside this guy. There are 2 dowels, there are 2 springs behind them, and these will simply fall out. So you can put a zip tie around this and kind of keep it all together, because if you lose these pieces, you're going to be pretty dissatisfied. So alright, so there's always some sort of a mystery bolt or screw, and in this case it would be these 2 guys in here. So you'll want to make sure you get every bolt looked over and undone before you split these cases. A lot of guys too like to take a piece of cardboard or whatever and sort of trace the left case, excuse me, and then they like to poke the bolts through the cardboard in the drawing that they've made. That way they know where these bolts go. However, if you don't want to do that, all these bolts will stick out about a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, when they're in the right spots when you go to put it back together. So if you make a mistake and mix them up, don't worry about it. You'll be able to figure it out. I like to keep everything collected in Ziploc baggies, and I go ahead and Sharpie label it, case bolts or whatever. There's another mystery bolt right there. Come on, man, I ain't playing. Alright, so we've got our case splitter tool on now, and basically the idea is that basically this bolt in the center is going to press on the crankshaft end while these three arms are fixed in the case that we're trying to lift. And so as this presses onward against the crank, it will lift the case off. You want to get these fairly well level with one another, since all these threaded surfaces, save for these two, are on different heights. So there's a little jam nut on the back of here you can use to adjust the height of the arm. And you just want to take your time. You can also tell that I have these broadly spread out, or as broad as I can on this bike. So when you tighten this, you want to make sure you're centered on the crank, and you just want to take your time. You don't want to rush it. You don't want to do anything hasty. And if you feel something binding, go ahead and back off and see if you can't figure out what that is. Sometimes you miss a bolt. I believe that I've gotten all of them, and we're going to go ahead and split the case now. So as you can see, the cases are starting to come apart. Take your time. You can only get these arms so spread out, and that's part of the reason I'm having to tap on the rear of the case. There's nowhere to affix one of the arms near the back, so just take your time. Never stick a screwdriver in here and try and pry. If you damage a gasket surface, you're going to have bigger problems later. You don't want anything to leak, obviously. So take your time. A lot of bikes actually have two little tabs in the casting in the back that stick out that you can wedge something between and pry against when you are splitting cases. This one didn't have that, so that's what the rubber mallet's all about. And I'm just going to keep on taking this off slowly until I can pull the left case all the way off, which will be in just a few moments. So unfortunately, part of the transmission just came with the case. So normally that does not happen. And as mentioned earlier, there are washers in this thing all over the place. So that's it. There is the inside of Project Bank Owned. Alright, so here's a quick ender to the case split video. We have the cases split. There is still some work to be done, of course. Cases are pretty dirty. They need some further disassembly, but now that I'm inside, I can have a look at the transmission, which actually looks pretty good initially. No chipped gears, no scoring or bluing from heat. When you guys are doing a teardown, it's very helpful to get yourself some Ziploc bags. Go ahead and label everything. Some of the stuff is obvious. For example, this bag doesn't need a label. I can tell by the old gasket that it is the power valve cover or the linkage arm door cover. Anyway, you get the point. You just want to kind of itemize this stuff, and you know, your bike will probably be apart for a little while for most of you, and so you're going to want to have something to fall back on later that has a label. I need to pop out all the seals and bearings. Of course, the crankshaft assembly, have it looked at, as they are getting kind of hard to find for the older RMs. I need to take the water pump out, and after that, once everything's removed, I can go ahead and clean these cases and figure out what I want to do with them coatings wise, or do I just want a nice clean media blast. So also in the meantime, this cylinder will be going out to probably Millennium. They do a really good job. I don't know if you can see inside. We definitely got some scoring, though it was not blown up. Glad we didn't have a bigger issue with it. But anyways, that's where we're at. That will conclude the breakdown video of the engine for the most part. There's obviously more to be done, but In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed doing it. And next step is to clean. I'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching.